because I think that's the struggle of trying to prioritize projects and policies all in one. I understand the objective is to allocate staff time, but the budget part really comes in long-range planning for the big capital items. And that's so when you talk about water meters or like, I don't know, give us another example, but PPI laterals and that, yeah, or alleys, I have a hard time talking about that because they're infrastructure projects that we look at on a 10-year basis, but we just haven't done that yet. We're not there yet. So I'm just trying to figure out for next year, how do we make this a different and distinct process, and what are we trying to achieve? Yes.
So would you prefer to keep those processes separate, or would you like to unify those?
Are we talking about next year?
Well, this year, really. Yeah, I mean, it was my understanding that we were trying to unify those various exact components of planning and organizational resources so that we gain a little more synergy.
So, I'm not opposed to that either, and of course that's my opinion, and the board can all weigh in. So either way, what are we trying to accomplish? And then we just eliminate long-range, we don't need a long-range financial plan and bonding discussions if we're going to synergize and put it in one. I had this pre-question at a pre-meeting, so it's the same question. Trustee Maher, sorry.
We're looking at the whole projects, our priorities as a community, as a board, not just policies. I mean, we're looking at, we have a finite number of staff hours to allocate. Like the water meters is going to take a lot of time. It's also a very expensive project. Is this a priority of the community to do? I mean, could be doing other stuff. We could say we're not going to do it and we're going to fight the state. But I mean, I think the board, this is a process, and then we get to the budget, and then we actually have the numbers, and we can sort it all out. But I think we got to look at everything.
Oh, Trustee McKay, thank you.
Yes, I think we have to do both because of the size of the organization and community that we are. And so what are we trying to achieve here as far as the water meter? Are you looking for consensus, or not consensus, but how do you want to?
I'm capturing here, I think the discussion's helpful because I want to make sure we're all on the same page of what are we prioritizing for. And yes, there's ways and methods for future because there will be more time, there will be more forethought, and we've already kind of not bucketed, but identified items in an organized fashion to work from. And here we're trying to identify even what are those that could be potentially work within for the 2019 year. The idea was to bucket them all together. Excuse me, I'm kind of losing my voice. To begin prioritizing, and then when budget does come up, those are the larger discussions you can have. Capital planning, bonding, that's something we want to do. It's prioritized accordingly, and then the staff resources can also be aligned to that.
I just want to push out legislation if we're going to do the capital project anyways. Trustee Bachers.
I have a question, and maybe the rest of the board can weigh in or not. But so, are you putting down the items that receive 2 or more, or 3 or more,
Yep.
or
2 or more, 2 or
okay,
3?
Then can I change?
Sure.
We change because actually, I have some that I'm a unique person on, and I agree with a lot of these other initiatives,
Okay.
and I would want them to not have some weight.
Please.
Is that all right?
Sure. Yes.
So on the large items, I would move my increase in the recruitment and retention of diverse Village of Shorewood workforce. I think that's important. Thank you, Trustee Martin, for mentioning that. But I'd like to use that vote because I think it's kind of comparable to Trustee Amenta's salary study, organizational analysis, community expense comparison. Not exactly, yours more budgetary, but I think it's part of a study. And if it doesn't happen, fine. But it would be nice to look at also diversity in workforce as far as not just the salary. I'm going to keep my other large initiative where it's at. Medium, I would want to move.
We're just starting with left right.
Oh, okay.
But we will get to medium and small.
Fair enough.
And again, that's just a way to kind of think about the resources and time as they're estimated.
Yep.
But I do see that as like one first step, and then we can get combining these because that will be an eventual thing. Do the small outweigh the large? We do need to look at these together, and I think that's where we can move to some more of the bucketing. but just seeing where alignment exists right now. Not that the others disappear, we're just gonna kind of move them down a little bit.
So are we doing, so we're not gonna do long-range financial plan this year? We're not doing it, because we're talking about projects now. And if that's the case, then I'd like to include all the other projects that are in the long-range financial plan.
Yes.
I didn't hear that we weren't going to do.
It's a clarification question, I think.
Right.
Well, I mean, are we not doing long-range financial? That's a legitimate question.
I think
Right.
that's a great question to have a response before we proceed. I'm just trying to,
Because if we're talking about some projects now,
Mhm.
I mean, I'm not clear why we would be picking out some things
Right.
from our long-range financial plan and talking about it here, prioritizing it here. That if we're doing this and we don't have to sit through 2 meetings on the long-range financial plan, it's fine.
Exactly, let's combine it, let's do it.
But if we're gonna do, if that's what we're
Sure.
doing, then let's include everything that,
and I want to defer, I'd like to defer to Rebecca on that, just being the owner of the broader process in terms of the visioning. Could you address the trustee Menta's question?
The long-range financial plan is a part of the visioning process. It is coming as one of the next steps. This was to get the overall feel for where we're headed and those for next year. My understanding is that AMI specifically is something that the village has actually talked about implementing since 2015.
It's been a few years.
But not recommended to
Moved forward,
forward.
but has not moved forward with. So,
Sewers and roads always get.
So, one of the reasons why, it's kind of coming forward now is because our software is going to be unsupported from this in the next year. And, so it's not, I don't want to continue to have it on a radar screen and either move, needs to move forward or not move forward. We just need to have an understanding that it will take time from the board as well as a significant amount of time from the staff. So one of the reasons why talking about some of these during the scope of what you're referring to the legislative process is that it's competing for sometimes the same resources. And in the past, we haven't given recognition to sometimes that competition. And I just want to make sure that we're representing that discussion clearly.
But to trustee clarification point, what about the lights, the LED light conversion? We've been talking about that for a long time, but it wasn't on the list. And my question for our next conversation, which is in the framework of a long-range financial plan that encompasses all of the projects you held up, is exactly that. Like, that has been on there, it's gonna save us money. We've talked about it for multiple years, and it's not part of this discussion. And I don't, without what trustee Amenta is saying, and I 100% agree with her, we have a long-range financial planning process that addresses a large scope of capital projects over a 10-year period. It's very difficult to bring forward as the administration to the legislators one of those and have us prioritize it in absence of the others, because it has debt capacity issues, it has financial issues that go with it. So it's really hard for us when you're saying, is it in our, compared to what? I mean, and then the timing matters based on the others. I mean, we might say yes to this in isolation, but then when we get to long-range financial planning where we really talk about it, then you're like, well, that's when we decide. We got to push it off a year. And usually Mark will come to us and say, like he did back to me when I said, what happened to our LED light conversion, which is one of those projects? And he said, I'm not recommending that till 2020 because we can't get the implementation done until then. We don't have to, and I said, okay, that makes sense. But I don't know how to speak to any one of those projects in isolation from the other because we have a long-range financial planning process. And it impacts debt payments, and then our 5% levy policy, so there's more that goes into it than just isolating one of them to talk about and prioritize. Mark,
Do you want to clarify? And then I wanted
Yeah,
to wrap back around too.
hearing that discussion, I think I'd like to maybe rephrase that topic and then, if it is implied that the board prioritizes something in the long-range planning process, that they're committed to those activities, And if that forward loads, staff and time commitments and those issues are addressed in a broader picture, I mean, I do see the disparity between picking some and not picking the others. So, you know, that makes a lot of sense to me after hearing some more conversation.
Thank you. Trustee Moore?
I mean, just coming at this pretty fresh, it seems a little bit like apples and oranges to me. I mean, it's very difficult for me to sit back and compare alleys or water mains or replacement gutters to, you know, the diversity policy for the village. I mean, both are very, very important, but they seem like they're two different, you know, some are capital projects and some are very different. And it just, it almost seems like they kind of naturally go in two different buckets because there's a larger conversation we have over here. There's interdependencies, there's effect on debt, whereas here it's more kind of policy-based prioritization. And you know, maybe that's not the whole story, but that's kind of what I'm seeing right now as a informal opinion throughout this meeting.
So, I mean, that was sort of why I asked that question when in my couple of minutes was that this particular item was the one piece that didn't seem like fit with everything else, and didn't really seem like the right place for us to have that conversation about is that a priority as a community, where there are other things that are, you know, we can really define as a priority. So that was kind of my question.
Can I make a suggestion or thought? As far as the process itself, if we were to look at two different groupings, again, we're in large, meaning small, but taking what's here, identify, and bucketing them into capital long-range planning items for additional discussion, but at least prioritizing that list and the others. Eventually, I think the lists need to connect and talk to each other because, again, there are competing resources. But would that be a productive way to move forward in selection and identifying how are we going to prioritize now these items?
As long as that bucket of capital projects includes the document that you just handed pulled up. So like street light, lead lighting also have competing resources, and we've been postponing that, so I don't, I mean, can I throw that in? Oh, Trustee Hay.
I mean, just to that point, because you brought it up a couple of times as an example, that was in the exact initiatives and it just didn't rise to the top. And so, I mean, so that, I don't want to get hung up on specific examples because I know you're trying to illustrate your point. I would, for the sake of moving forward, I would be satisfied to, it seems easier to remove this one and add it to that conversation than to bring all of those things into here at the 11th hour. So if that's where the group is hung up, that's okay. What I don't want to lose is I think staff did a really thoughtful and insightful job of really thinking about what's different about this project is the level of comprehensive planning. It's like a comprehensive plan within, you know, a plan. So of infrastructure. And so I think they did a really good job, and that makes sense to me why it's here. It doesn't mean that we have to take it on like that, but it is the only capital project that I saw that really does just, is similar to Wilson Drive. That became a really huge comprehensive planning process with lots of different departments involved and lots of different committees. This isn't going to be quite like that, but I think it was really good foresight on the part of the staff to say, you know, this is something that's worth thinking about because if you do prioritize it as a capital project, it's going to have a staff and board impact, which then will affect your meeting management and all these other aspects of our organization that we, you know, have been overlooked. So I don't want to lose that because I think that that's really true. But it's okay to park it and look at it all together.
So just to clarify, this seems to be in NIV number 3, That seems to be the one that would also take place in the capital plan.
Right.
And it seems to be an outlier in terms of how do we prioritize among all of these, with that one saying this needs to be done at some point, and probably sooner than later. Okay.
Student parking, transportation,
Which
and
one?
AMI. I can't, I was reading
Sorry.
on the slide.
Just AMI, right? What was the other one?
I think you started with parking and transportation.
For what specifically?
The large.
So the large, the ones where there's at least 2 or 3
Okay.
that bubble to the top. Number
Yep.
7 is transportation
Okay.
in that bucket, the field place overnight parking. Number 3, which was sort of an outlier, I think we can talk about it here, it makes sense because of the staff impact, but that conversation will also take place through the capital planning discussions. Economic development, determine under what circumstances TIF policies may be used. Number 5, organizational management, a salary study, organizational analysis, adding diversity in there too, as trustee Bachus mentioned.
Clarification on both of them. Transportation, you're talking about the intermodal circulation planning effort.
That one's here as well. There's 2 separate ones, so they're both under transportation, number 7 and 8.